The sound of shattering crystal didn't stop the jazz band at the Gilded Lily, but the sudden, terrifying silence from Table 1 certainly did. Everyone in New York's underworld knew that spilling wine on Gabriel Kovac was a death sentence. He didn't just run the city, he owned the shadows. When the trembling waitress dropped the tray, Gabriel sneered, dismissing her in a language no one else was supposed to understand. He thought she was invisible. He was wrong. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She straightened her spine, looked him dead in the eye, and uttered 7 words in flawless, icy Russian that turned the predator into the prey. The air inside the Gilded Lily was always kept at exactly 68 degrees. Yet Sienna Brooks felt sweat trickling down her spine. It wasn't the temperature, it was the clientele. This wasn't just a restaurant on Manhattan's Upper East Side. It was neutral ground for the monsters who wore Italian suits and traded human lives like stocks. At Table 1, the epicenter of the room's gravity, sat Gabriel Kovac. Gabriel wasn't handsome in the way models were. He was handsome in the way a cliff edge was breathtaking sharp and promising a fatal drop if you leaned too close. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Sienna's entire life, earnings tailored by Anderson & Shepherd on Savile Row to hide the shoulder holster beneath his left arm. "More Pinot. Now," a voice snapped. It was Lucas Rossi Gabriel's second in command, a man with too much hair gel and too little patience. Sienna nodded, keeping her eyes low. "Of course, sir." She moved to the table, the bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux heavy in her hand. Her wrist was throbbing, an old injury flaring up from the rain outside, but she kept her grip steady. She had been working here for 3 weeks under the name Sienna Brooks. Invisible. Boring. Safe. As she leaned in to pour, a heavy hand slammed onto the table. It was Gabriel. He was arguing with the man opposite him, a rival lieutenant named Oleg Vlasov. "You take the docks, I take the skyline, Oleg. That was the deal." Gabriel growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the table. The sudden impact of his hand jumped the silverware. Sienna flinched. The bottleneck clipped the edge of Gabriel's wine glass. Crash. Red wine exploded across the pristine white tablecloth. But worse, far, far worse, a dark, blood-like stain began to spread instantly across the lapel of Gabriel's grey suit. The entire restaurant went silent. Forks froze halfway to mouths. The piano player hesitated, missing a beat. Gabriel slowly looked down at his chest, then up at Sienna. His eyes were the color of gunmetal, and right now they were devoid of any humanity. Sienna stepped back, clutching the empty bottle. I am so sorry, sir. I'll get a towel." Gabriel stood up. He towered over her 6'3" of pure, condensed violence. He didn't yell. He didn't strike her. That would have been less terrifying. Instead, he adjusted his cuffs, his expression one of utter boredom and disgust. He turned to Lucas, dismissing Sienna entirely, speaking in rapid, low-toned Russian, a language he used when he wanted to be candid without the Americans listening. "Uberi, etu greaz, sklas moich. Ona pachnet deszewym mylom i neudasze. Skazi menec heru, kto by jeje uwolili prez hadechem, ja wajrezhu jeje jazyk." Translation. "Get this filth out of my sight. She smells like cheap soap and failure. Tell the manager to fire her before I cut out her tongue." Lucas laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Consider it done, boss." Gabriel turned his back on her, reaching for his napkin to dab at the stain, dismissing her existence as if she were an insect he had already crushed. Sienna stood there. The fear that had been gripping her throat suddenly vanished, replaced by a cold, familiar rage she hadn't felt in 5 years. The trembling in her hands stopped. Her posture shifted. The slouch of the tired waitress disappeared, replaced by the rigid grace of a soldier. She took 1 step forward. Vine ochen, vnimatelny dlia, cheloveka, zagolovu kotorogo naznachena cena Gabriel, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a serrated knife. The accent wasn't American, trying to speak Russian. It was native, specifically the dialect spoken in the high councils of St. Petersburg. Translation: You aren't very observant for a man with a price on his head. Gabriel. Gabriel froze, his hand halted mid-wipe on his lapel. Sienna continued, her eyes locking onto his as he whipped around to face her. She switched to English, but the cadence was lethal. And for the record, it's not cheap soap, it's lavender. Maybe if you weren't so busy choking on your own ego, you'd notice the man at the bar has been photographing your documents for the last 20 minutes. The silence in the room was now heavy enough to crush bones. Gabriel stared at her. For the first time in a decade, the ruthless king of New York looked genuinely stunned. Sienna dropped the empty wine bottle on the table. It didn't break. It just thudded with finality. "I quit," she said. She turned on her heel and walked out the front door, leaving the most dangerous man in the city staring at her back. Gabriel Kovac did not chase her. Not immediately. He was a predator, not a dog. "Get the man at the bar," Gabriel ordered, his voice terrifyingly calm. Lucas and 2 other guards swarmed the man at the bar Sienna had indicated. Within seconds, they found a miniature camera disguised as a tie clip. The man was dragged out the back exit before he could scream. Gabriel sat back down, ignoring the wine stain. He stared at the swinging kitchen doors where the waitress had vanished. "Who is she?" he asked. "Just a girl," Lucas stammered, clearly, shaken that he had missed the spy at the bar. "Name is Sienna Brooks. Hired 3 weeks ago. Clean background check." A waitress with a clean background check who speaks high Bratva Russian and spots surveillance operatives better than my own head of security. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "She's not a waitress, Lucas. She's a plant." "I'll bring her in," Lucas said, reaching for his radio. "No." Gabriel stood up, buttoning his stained jacket. "I'll do it." 30 minutes later, Gabriel sat in the back of his armored Cadillac Escalade, a laptop open on his knees. His personal hacker, a nervous kid named Cypher, was typing furiously in the front seat. "I'm telling you, boss, it's weird," Cypher said. "Sienna Brooks exists. Born in Ohio, moved to New York in 2023. Social security matches. Credit history matches." "Dig deeper," Gabriel commanded. "I am... But... Wait." Cypher paused. "Okay, this is subtle. Her dental records in the file, they're a copy-paste from a deceased woman in Seattle, and her rental agreement for her apartment in Queens. The landlord listed is a shell company owned by a holding firm in Zurich." "Zurich," Gabriel murmured. "Who owns the holding firm?" "It's encrypted, military grade. Boss, this girl isn't a nobody. This is a witness protection level build, or something darker. She's a ghost." Gabriel looked out the window as the rain lashed against the bulletproof glass. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't fear, he had burned that out of himself years ago. It was intrigue, obsession. He had insulted her. He had called her filth, and she had saved his life by pointing out the spy, then humiliated him and vanished. "Find her phone signal," Gabriel ordered. "She ditched her burner phone in the alley behind the restaurant," Cypher said. But I picked up a momentary ping from a secondary device, a satellite signal. It lasted 3 seconds. Where? The meatpacking district, an old industrial loft on 14th Street. Gabriel signaled the driver. Go. The building was a converted slaughterhouse, red brick, crumbling under the assault of the New York weather. It was the kind of place people went to be forgotten. Gabriel moved up the stairs alone. He told Lucas to stay in the car. This required a scalpel, not a hammer. He reached the third-floor door, 3B. The lock was simple, too simple. He picked it in 6 seconds and pushed the door open, his hand hovering near his holster. The apartment was sparse. A mattress on the floor, a table and a wall covered in maps. Not maps of New York, maps of Moscow, Kyiv, and London. Red string connected photos of men in suits. And there in the center of the web was a photo of Gabriel himself. You're loud for an assassin. A voice came from the shadows. Gabriel spun around. Sienna, or whatever her name was sitting on the windowsill, one leg dangling out into the rainy night. She had changed out of her waitress uniform into black tactical cargo pants and a fitted thermal shirt. She held a suppressed Glock 19 loosely in her hand, resting on her knee. I'm not an assassin tonight, Gabriel said, raising his hands slightly to show he wasn't drawing his weapon. If I were, my men would have leveled the building. True, she agreed. Lucas is too clumsy for stairs. Who are you? Gabriel asked, stepping into the light. Sienna Brooks is a fiction. The dental records gave you away. She smiled, a cold, humorless curve of her lips. Sienna was boring anyway. She tipped poorly. You speak the dialect of the inner circle, Gabriel said, taking a step closer. The air between them crackled with electricity. It wasn't just danger. It was chemistry, potent and volatile. You saved me from the spy at the bar. Why, you hate me. I saw it in your eyes. I don't hate you, Gabriel. You're just a variable in an equation I'm trying to solve, she said, hopping down from the windowsill. She didn't raise the gun, but she didn't holster it either. And I didn't save you. I just didn't want the FBI raiding the restaurant before I got what I needed. And what do you need? Information, she said. About the Black Lotus. Gabriel stiffened. The Black Lotus was a myth, a legend of a shadow organization that dismantled syndicates from the inside. That's a fairy tale, Gabriel scoffed. Is it? She walked over to the wall of maps and tapped a photo next to Gabriel's. It was a picture of his father, Victor Kovac, who had been murdered 5 years ago, a murder that had never been solved. Your father was meeting with a contact from the Black Lotus the night he died, she revealed. I was there. Gabriel's heart hammered against his ribs. You were there. You're lying. You look 24. I'm 26, she corrected. And I was his bodyguard's daughter. My name isn't Sienna. It's Natalia. The name hit Gabriel like a physical blow. Natalia, the daughter of his father's most loyal enforcer. The girl who had vanished the same night his father was killed. He remembered a scrawny teenager with braided hair who used to watch them train. Natalia, he whispered. We thought you were dead. We found pieces. You found what I wanted you to find, Natalia said, her voice dropping an octave, losing the bravado and revealing a sliver of pain. I had to run Gabriel, because the person who killed your father, and mine, wasn't a stranger. She looked him dead in the eye, the silence of the room amplifying her next words. It was your brother Andrew. Gabriel laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. Andrew is dead. He died in the car crash with them. No, Natalia said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a gold signet ring. She tossed it to him. Gabriel caught it. He looked at the inscription. Kovac. It was Andrew's ring, but it wasn't scorched or damaged. It was polished. Worn recently. He's alive, Gabriel, Natalia said, moving closer until she was inches from him. He could smell the lavender soap he had mocked earlier. It was intoxicating. He's running the Black Lotus, and he's coming for you next. That spy at the bar. He wasn't FBI. He was Andrew's scout. Gabriel gripped the ring so hard, the metal bit into his palm. His entire world was tilting on its axis. The brother he had mourned was the monster in the dark. The waitress he had insulted was the only person who knew the truth. Why come back now? Gabriel asked, his voice rough. Because, Natalia whispered, looking up at him, her vulnerability flashing for just a second. I can't kill him alone. I need the ruthless king of New York. And if I refuse, then you die tonight, she said simply. Andrew's hit squad is 3 minutes away. I saw them on the perimeter cameras. As if on cue, the sound of tires screeching echoed from the street below, followed by the heavy thud of boots hitting the pavement. Gabriel looked at the door, then back at Natalia. The insult at the restaurant seemed a lifetime ago. Now there was only war. Do you have a secondary exit? Gabriel asked, drawing his weapon. Natalia smirked, racking the slide of her Glock. Fire escape. But we have to jump. I hate jumping, Gabriel muttered. Try not to spill wine on yourself this time, she teased. Gabriel actually smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Lead the way, Musa. She laughed, kicked the window open, and together they leaped into the darkness, just as the apartment door exploded inward. The impact with the pavement was brutal, but Natalia knew how to fall. She tucked her shoulder, rolling through the momentum to absorb the shock coming up in a crouch with her weapon raised. Gabriel was less graceful. He landed hard on his left side, a grunt of pain tearing from his throat as the expensive Italian wool of his suit tore against the wet asphalt. Move, Natalia hissed, grabbing his good arm. They have thermal optics. If we stay still, we're dead. My leg, Gabriel gritted out, testing his weight. It's not broken, just twisted. Run on it anyway. Above them, the window of the loft was bathed in the red glow of laser sights. Bullets began to chew up the brickwork around them, sending shards of masonry raining down into the alley. Natalia didn't flinch. She returned fire, 2 controlled shots, up toward the fire escape to force their pursuers to duck, and then dragged the King of New York into the shadows. They didn't take the street. That was a rookie mistake. Natalia led him through a maze of service corridors and chain-link fences, moving with a familiarity that unsettled Gabriel. She knew this city's skeleton better than he knew its skin. They burst out onto a service road near the Hudson River. Gabriel was limping his breath, coming in ragged gasps, but his eyes were scanning for threats. We need a car, Gabriel said, reaching for a phone that wasn't there. He cursed, remembering he had left it in the loft. No cars. Gridlock is a trap, Natalia said, holstering her weapon beneath her jacket. She pointed toward a rusted metal grate in the ground near the underpass. We go down. Gabriel stared at the sewer grate. You have to be joking. The Black Lotus has eyes on the traffic cameras, Gabriel. Do you want to be a clean corpse or a dirty survivor? Gabriel scowled, the indignity warring with his survival instinct. He grabbed the grate and heaved it open. After you, princess. They descended into the darkness. The smell was damp and metallic, the sound of the city above muffled into a distant hum. They navigated the old subway maintenance tunnels, a labyrinth of dripping pipes and graffiti that hadn't seen a worker in 20 years. After an hour of walking in silence, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a throbbing ache in Gabriel's leg and a burning curiosity. "You said you were there," Gabriel's voice echoed in the tunnel. "The night my father died. You said you saw Andrew do it." Natalia didn't look back. She kept her flashlight trained on the slick path ahead. "I saw him rig the brakes on the Mercedes. I was 12, hiding in the garage rafters. I thought he was fixing it. I didn't understand what I'd seen until the news broke the next morning. Why didn't you tell anyone? Who you—" She stopped and turned the flashlight beam cutting across Gabriel's face. "You were 21, grieving and drunk. Lucas was already ambitious. If I had spoken up, Andrew would have killed me before I finished the sentence. So I ran. My father died in that car too, Gabriel. You lost a father. I lost my entire world." Gabriel looked at her, really looked at her stripped of the waitress uniform and the pretense. In the harsh light, he saw the faint white scar running through her eyebrow, the callus on her trigger finger. She wasn't a subordinate. She was a survivor of the same war that had defined him. "I'm sorry," Gabriel said. The words tasted foreign. He never apologized. Natalia's expression softened just a fraction. "Don't apologize, just help me kill him." They emerged from the tunnels in Queens in an industrial park filled with auto body shops. Natalia led him to a nondescript storage unit facility. She punched a code into the keypad of Unit 404. The door rolled up to reveal not a pile of old furniture, but a tactical safe house. A cot, a first aid station, a rack of encrypted servers, and a wall of weapons. "Welcome to my parlor," she muttered, hitting the lights. Gabriel limped to the cot and sat down heavily. He watched as Natalia moved around the room. She was efficient, stripping off her wet jacket, revealing sculpted arms and a tattoo on her shoulder, a black lotus flower with a dagger through it. "A reminder?" Gabriel asked, gesturing to the ink. "A promise," she corrected. She grabbed a medical kit and pulled a chair over to him. "Pants off." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "At least buy me dinner first." "Your ankle is swelling the size of a grapefruit, Gabriel. I need to wrap it. Don't flatter yourself." He undid his belt and slid the ruined suit trousers off. His ankle was indeed purple and swollen. Natalia's hands were cool as she applied a numbing gel. Her touch was professional, yet the intimacy of the moment was undeniable. The Ruthless Mafia boss, sitting in his boxes in a storage unit, being tended to by the woman he had tried to fire 3 hours ago. "You have a plan," Gabriel said, watching her work. It wasn't a question. "Andrew is coming out of the shadows," Natalia said, wrapping the bandage tight. "He's been operating as a ghost, using the alias The Architect. But he has an ego. He wants to reclaim the city he thinks you stole from him. He's hosting a masquerade gala tomorrow night at the Pierre Hotel, the Midnight Sun charity ball." "The Pierre?" Gabriel scoffed. "That's my territory. Not anymore. He bought the management company last week through 3 shell corporations. He's going to announce his return not as Andrew Kovac, but as a legitimate businessman who survived the tragic accident and has returned to save the city from crime. Specifically, your crime." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "He's going to frame me." "He already has," Natalia said, standing up and tossing him a tablet. "Look." Gabriel activated the screen. It was a news report. His face was plastered next to a headline, "Mafia Don Wanted for Murder of Waitress." The video showed grainy footage from the Gilded Lily. It showed Gabriel arguing with Sienna Natalia. Then the camera cut. The next clip showed a body, a woman with Natalia's build and hair wearing the Waitress uniform, being fished out of the East River. They used a double, Gabriel realized. The world thinks I killed you. And tomorrow night at the gala, Andrew is going to present evidence linking you to a dozen other hits. He'll play the hero who helps the police take down his evil brother. The police will storm your penthouse, your accounts will be frozen, and you'll be hunted down like a dog. Gabriel stood up, testing the bandage. It held. The pain was dull now, focused into a sharp point of rage. Then we go to the gala. Gabriel said, his voice dropping to that lethal rumble that made grown men shiver. And we remind my brother that you can't take the crown if you don't have a head. We can't just walk in, Natalia warned. It's invite only, biometric security, retinal scans. Gabriel walked over to the weapon wall, running his hand over a customized Sig Sauer. He looked back at her, a dark smirk playing on his lips. I'm Gabriel Kovac. I don't need an invitation. But we do need suits. If I'm going to die Natalia, I'm not doing it in a storage unit. I'm doing it in a tuxedo. The next 12 hours were a blur of calculated preparation. They couldn't go to Gabriel's tailor's. They were being watched. They couldn't use his credit cards. They were flagged. We need cash, Gabriel said. They were sitting on the floor of the storage unit, eating cold protein bars. I have cash, Natalia said, kicking a duffel bag near the servers. 200,000, stolen from one of Andrew's couriers last month. Gabriel chuckled, shaking his head. I like you, Natalia. You're a thief. I'm a pragmatist. They sourced the clothes from a cleaner in Chinatown, an old woman named Madame Lin, who outfitted assassins and spies. She didn't ask questions. She just measured them with quick, sharp movements and took the cash. For Gabriel, a midnight blue tuxedo with a shawl collar cut to conceal a shoulder harness. For Natalia, a gown that looked like it was woven from liquid darkness, black silk that clung to every curve with a slit high up the thigh to allow access to the knife strapped to her leg. By 700 p.m., the transformation was complete. Gabriel stood in front of a cracked mirror in the back of Madame Lin's shop. He adjusted his bow tie. He looked every inch the billionaire kingpin, but there was a new hardness in his eyes. He turned when he heard the curtain rustle. Natalia stepped out. Gabriel stopped breathing for a second. The waitress with the cheap soap was gone. The tactical soldier was gone. In their place was a queen of the underworld. The dress left her back bare, exposing the scars of her past, but she wore them like jewelry. She had pulled her hair up, leaving her neck exposed, a neck he had threatened to cut, but now found himself staring at, with a hunger that had nothing to do with violence. Stop staring, Natalia said, though her cheeks flushed slightly. You'll wrinkle the suit. You look... Gabriel struggled for the word. Dangerous. Good. That's the point. She handed him a mask. It was a Venetian-style half-face, matte black with silver filigree. Put it on. Until we make our move, you are just another wealthy donor. And you. She held up her own mask, delicate lace and obsidian feathers. I'm your +1. They took a black town car arranged by Madame Lin to the Pierre Hotel. The rain had stopped, leaving the city sick and glittering under the streetlights. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. Gabriel reached out and covered Natalia's hand with his. She didn't pull away. Her fingers were cold, but his were warm. If we don't make it out... Gabriel started. Don't. She cut him off. No speeches. No speech, Gabriel said, turning her hand over and tracing the calluses on her palm. Just a fact. I insulted you because I was bored. I thought everyone in my world was either a sycophant or a target. You were the first real thing I'd seen in years. I regret the words." Natalia looked at him, her eyes searching his mask-like face. "You're a bad man, Gabriel." "I know, but maybe." She leaned in closer, the scent of lavender filling the space between them. "You're the right kind of bad man for me." The car stopped. The driver tapped on the glass. "We're here." The moment shattered, but the energy remained vibrating between them like a pulled guitar string. They stepped out onto the red carpet. Cameras flashed, blinding and chaotic. The Pierre was swarming with New York's elite senators, hedge fund managers, tech moguls. And guarding them were men with earpieces who didn't look like hotel security. "Mercenaries," Natalia whispered, taking Gabriel's arm. "Serbian paramilitary. Andrew's favorites." "Stay close," Gabriel murmured. They moved through the checkpoint. The retinal scanner was the hurdle. Gabriel had a jammer in his pocket, a device Cypher had built years ago for high-end heists. As the scanner beam hit his eye, he pressed the button. The machine beeped. Error. Manual override required. The guard frowned. "Sir, please look again." "Do you know who I am?" Gabriel channeled his arrogance, lowering his voice. "I am Victor St. Cloud. I own the bank that holds your mortgage. If you make me wait another second, I will foreclose on your house before dessert is served." The guard hesitated. The name was fake, but the attitude was pure power. The line behind them was growing impatient. "Let him through," a supervisor waved. They walked into the grand ballroom. It was a sea of velvet diamonds and masks. A string quartet played a haunting waltz. At the far end of the room, on a raised dais, stood a man in a white mask and a white tuxedo. Gabriel felt his blood run cold. Even with the mask, he knew the posture. He knew the way the man held his champagne glass. Andrew. "He's here," Gabriel whispered. "Wait." Natalia squeezed his arm. "Look at the balcony. Snipers." "We need a distraction," Gabriel said. "I have one," Natalia said. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small metallic sphere. Flashbang, modified for low noise, high blinding capacity. Subtle. "I told you I'm not a waitress." Just then the music stopped. A spotlight hit the dais. Andrew stepped forward to the microphone. His voice, smooth and cultured, boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Midnight Sun. Tonight is a night of revelations. For too long, this city has been held hostage by darkness, by corruption, by the Kovac crime family." A murmur went through the crowd. "But tonight," Andrew continued, "we cleanse the city. I have evidence that will put the current head of the family, Gabriel Kovac, away for life. Or perhaps end his reign even sooner." Andrew gestured to the large screen behind him. It flickered to life, showing the doctored footage of the murder. "Now," Gabriel said. Natalia rolled the sphere under the nearest table. 3, 2, 1. Bang! A brilliant flash of white light erupted, blinding the nearest guards and sending the crowd into a panic. Screams erupted. The elite of New York scrambled for the exits. "Go!" Gabriel roared. He didn't run for the exit. He ran for the stage. Natalia was right beside him, lifting the hem of her gown with one hand and drawing her Glock with the other. A guard stepped in Gabriel's path. Gabriel didn't slow down. He struck the man in the throat, a devastating chop that dropped him instantly and snatched the guard's weapon midair. Andrew saw them coming. He didn't look scared. He looked delighted. "Gabriel," Andrew shouted over the chaos, spreading his arms wide. "You actually came. I won the bet." "It's over, Andrew," Gabriel yelled, vaulting onto the stage. Andrew laughed, ripping off his white mask. His face was scarred, burn marks running up the left side of his jaw, souvenirs from the car crash. "Over, brother, we haven't even started the main course." Andrew snapped his fingers. From the curtains behind the stage, a dozen men emerged. They weren't just mercenaries. They were heavily armored shock troops. But the real horror wasn't the soldiers. It was the person Andrew dragged out from behind the podium. It was Lucas. Lucas was beaten, bloody, his face a ruin. He was on his knees, a gun pressed to his temple by Andrew. "You have a choice, Gabriel," Andrew sneered. "Drop the gun, and I kill Lucas quickly. Keep the gun, and I kill him slowly. Then I kill your little waitress, and then I kill you." The room was clearing out, leaving only the players on the stage. The standoff was absolute. Gabriel's gun was trained on Andrew's head. Natalia's gun was trained on the shock troops. Andrew's gun was pressed to Lucas's skull. "Gabriel," Lucas wheezed, blood bubbling past his lips. Don't do it. It's a trap." "Such loyalty," Andrew mocked. "It's disgusting." Gabriel stared at his brother. He looked at Natalia, who was outnumbered 10-1, but standing her ground. "Let him go, Andrew," Gabriel said softly. "This is between us." "Everything is between us," Andrew screamed, his composure cracking. "You were always the favorite, the golden sun I had to burn to become something, Gabriel. I had to die to be born." Andrew cocked the hammer of his gun. "Drop it, Gabriel, or I paint the stage with his brains." Gabriel hesitated. His grip on the gun tightened. He couldn't save everyone. In this world, you had to choose who survived. He looked at Natalia. Her eyes met his. There was no fear there, only calculation. She gave him a microscopic nod. She had a plan. Gabriel slowly raised his hands. Okay, Andrew. You win." He dropped the gun. It clattered on the wooden stage. Andrew grinned a feral, victorious look. "Good boy." He moved the gun away from Lucas's head to aim it at Gabriel. That was the mistake. "Now!" Natalia screamed. She didn't shoot Andrew. She shot the chandelier directly above the stage. The massive crystal fixture, weighing 1/2 ton, groaned and sheared off its mounting. Andrew looked up too late. With a deafening crash, the crystal monster plummeted down, separating Gabriel from the shock troops, smashing into the stage with the force of a bomb. Glass shards flew like shrapnel. Dust billowed. In the confusion, Gabriel didn't dive for cover. He dove for Lucas. He dragged his bloody lieutenant off the edge of the stage just as the shock troops opened fire blindly through the dust cloud. Gabriel, Natalia, and Lucas huddled behind the heavy oak bar near the stage. "Is he dead?" Natalia asked, reloading her magazine. "Andrew?" Gabriel wiped glass dust from his eyes. "A chandelier won't kill him. He's a cockroach. We're pinned down." Lucas coughed. "Boss, the back exit. The kitchen. I rigged it." Gabriel looked at Lucas. "You rigged it." I knew he'd bring me here." Lucas gasped. "I planted C4 on the load-bearing columns in the kitchen. The detonator inside my watch." Gabriel looked at the expensive Rolex on Lucas's wrist. "Blow it," Gabriel ordered. "It'll bring the roof down," Natalia said. "On us." "Not if we're fast," Gabriel said. He grabbed Natalia's hand. Do you trust me? I'm starting to, she said. Then run. Lucas triggered the watch. Boom! The back of the Pierre Hotel erupted. The shockwave knocked the mercenaries off their feet. The wall behind the bar disintegrated, opening a hole to the rainy night outside. Gabriel, carrying Lucas and Natalia, covering their rear, sprinted through the smoke and debris, jumping from the jagged edge of the ballroom into the dark alley below, as the ballroom collapsed behind them, burying the Black Lotus in rubble and crystal. But as they hit the wet pavement, gasping for air, a single shot rang out from the darkness above. Gabriel jerked. He looked down. A red flower was blooming on his white shirt, right over his heart. He stumbled, falling to his knees. "Gabriel!" Natalia screamed, catching him before he hit the ground. She looked up. High on the remaining ledge of the ruined ballroom, a figure stood. Half his face was bleeding, his white suit grey with dust. Andrew. He lowered his smoking gun, smiled, and vanished into the smoke. Gabriel Kovac lay on the wet pavement, the rain mixing with his blood, as the woman who had vowed to kill him frantically tried to save his life. The ride to the safe house was a blur of neon lights and agonizing pain. Lucas drove the stolen sedan with one hand, his other clutching his bruised ribs, while in the back seat, Natalia waged a war against death. "Stay with me, Gabriel," she commanded, her hands slick with his blood. She was pressing a wad of gauze against his chest right below the collarbone. The bullet had missed the heart by an inch, but it had nicked an artery. Gabriel's face was grey, his eyes unfocused. You're ruining your dress," he rasped, a faint, delirious smile touching his lips. "Shut up," she choked out, her voice trembling for the first time. "If you die, I'll kill you." "Paradox," Gabriel mumbled, and then his eyes rolled back. "Lucas, drive faster," Natalia screamed. They didn't go to a hospital. They went to the basement of a veterinary clinic in Yonkers, run by a man named Doc Calloway, an ex-combat medic who owed the Kovac family his life. The next 3 hours were a nightmare of fluorescent lights and the beep of cardiac monitors. Natalia paced the hallway, still wearing the ruined black gown, looking like a vengeful spirit. She scrubbed the blood off her hands, but she could still feel the warmth of it. When Doc Calloway finally emerged, he looked exhausted. "He's stable. He lost a lot of blood, and the lung collapsed, but I patched the vessel. He's strong like a bull. He'll live." Natalia slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She buried her face in her hands. She hadn't realized she was holding her breath for 3 hours. When she finally walked into the recovery room, Gabriel was awake. He was pale, hooked up to an IV, shirtless with a massive bandage across his chest. He watched her come in. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was the quiet of a storm that had passed. "You stayed," Gabriel said, his voice rough. "I had to," Natalia replied, pulling a metal chair to his bedside. "You owe me a new dress." Gabriel tried to laugh, but it turned into a wince. He reached out his hand. She took it. This time she didn't just hold it. She interlaced her fingers with his. "Why?" Gabriel asked, his thumb tracing her knuckles. "I treated you like garbage. I represent everything you hate about this city. Why save me?" "Because," Natalia whispered, looking at their joined hands. "The world isn't black and white, Gabriel. It's grey. And in the grey, you're the only one who keeps his word. Andrew. Andrew is chaos. You are order. And..." She hesitated, looking up into his steel-grey eyes. "And I don't want to be alone anymore." Gabriel squeezed her hand. "Come here." She leaned in. Closer. She moved until her face was inches from his. I promise you. Gabriel whispered, the intensity in his eyes burning brighter than the fever. I will never insult you again. I will never look past you. From now on, you are the only thing I see. He kissed her. It tasted of antiseptic and iron, but underneath it was fire. It was a seal, a blood oath. But the moment was broken by the door opening. Lucas limped in, holding a tablet. Sorry to interrupt the honeymoon, Lucas said, though he looked relieved to see his boss awake. But we have a problem, a big one. He handed the tablet to Natalia, who held it up for Gabriel. It was a live stream. Andrew was standing at the head of a massive table in the boardroom of the Kovac Tower. Seated around him were the heads of the 5 families. My brother is dead, Andrew was saying on the screen, his face a mask of faux mourning. Killed by the very incompetence that plagued his reign. As his only surviving kin, I claim the seat of the chairman. Tonight we unite the families under the Black Lotus. The Dons were nodding. They were buying it. He's taking everything, Lucas said. By tomorrow morning, you'll be a memory. Gabriel stared at the screen. The pain in his chest seemed to vanish, replaced by cold, hard resolve. What time is that meeting ending? Gabriel asked. They're voting in 2 hours, Lucas said. At midnight. Gabriel sat up. The heart monitor spiked, beeping rapidly. Gabriel, no, Natalia warned, putting a hand on his shoulder. You can't. You have a hole in your chest. Gabriel swung his legs off the bed. He gritted his teeth, sweat popping on his forehead, but he stood up. He swayed, and Natalia caught him. I don't need to fight him with my fists, Gabriel said, steadying himself on her shoulder. I just need to show them I'm alive. A ghost can't lead a family, but neither can a liar. You can barely walk, Natalia argued. Then help me, Gabriel said. He looked at her, and the ruthless boss was back. Help me take back my kingdom, Natalia, and when I do, you'll rule it beside me. Natalia looked at Lucas, then back at Gabriel. She saw the fire in him. He wouldn't stay in this bed, even if she chained him to it. Fine, she said, a dangerous smile spreading across her face. But if you bleed out on the carpet, I'm leaving you there. Deal. Gabriel smirked. Lucas, get the car, and get me a suit. I'm not dying in a hospital gown. The boardroom of Kovac Tower was high above the city, a glass box floating in the sky. The mood was somber, but decisive. All in favor of recognizing Andrew Kovac as capo di tutti capi? Asked Don Moretti, the oldest of the crime lords. Hands began to rise. 1, 2, 3. Andrew watched with a triumphant gleam in his eyes. He had won. Years of plotting the car bomb, the Black Lotus, the framing it had all worked. Unanimous? Andrew said, standing up to accept the ring that signified absolute power. I am humbled. I promise to lead you into a new era of ding. The elevator doors at the far end of the hall chimed. Everyone turned. The elevator was private. Only the boss had the keycard. The doors slid open. Andrew's face went white. The glass of champagne in his hand shattered, spilling liquid onto the table, a grim echo of the wine spill that had started it all. Gabriel walked out. He was leaning heavily on a cane, his face pale, wearing a black suit that fit a little looser than usual. But he was walking, and beside him, supporting his left side, was a woman in a sharp black trench coat, her eyes scanning the room like a predator. I object to the vote, Gabriel said. His voice was quieter than usual, but in the dead silence of the room, it sounded like thunder. "Ghost," Don Moretti gasped, crossing himself. "I'm no ghost, Moretti," Gabriel said, limping toward the head of the table. "I'm just hard to kill." Andrew recovered from his shock. He slammed his hands on the table. "He's an imposter, or he's here to assassinate us. Guards, kill him." 4 Black Lotus operatives stepped out of the shadows, raising their weapons. "Don't," Natalia said. She didn't raise a gun. She raised a small remote detonator. "The elevator was rigged. The lobby is rigged. And the pillars behind you are rigged. Lucas was very busy while you were voting." The guards hesitated. "You're bluffing," Andrew sneered. "Am I?" Natalia tilted her head. "I'm the girl who blew up the Pierre Hotel ballroom 3 hours ago. Do you really want to test me?" The guards lowered their weapons. Gabriel reached the head of the table. He looked at the empty chair, his chair, then at Andrew. "You told them I was incompetent," Gabriel said. "You told them I killed an innocent waitress. You told them I was weak." "You are weak," Andrew screamed, pulling a handgun from his waistband. "You let a woman distract you. You let sentimentality rot your brain. I am the strong one. I did what had to be done." "You killed our father," Gabriel said. The room gasped. The Dons looked at each other. Patricide was the ultimate sin in their world. "Lies," Andrew shouted, aiming the gun at Gabriel's heart. "He died in an accident." "Play it," Gabriel said to Natalia. Natalia tapped her phone. Over the boardroom speakers, a recording played. It was crisp and clear audio captured from the microphone in the podium at the Pierre Hotel just before the explosion. Andrew's voice echoed, "I had to burn to become something, Gabriel. I had to die to be born." And then earlier audio from a hidden bug Natalia had planted on Lucas. "Rig the brakes on the Mercedes. Neither of them will survive the crash." The silence in the room was absolute. Don Moretti stood up slowly. He looked at Andrew with pure disgust. "You killed Victor." Andrew looked around. The guards were backing away. The Dons were reaching for their own weapons. He was alone. "He was old," Andrew yelled, backing toward the floor-to-ceiling window. "He was holding us back. I built the Black Lotus to I am the future." "You are nothing," Gabriel said, taking a step forward. "You aren't a king, Andrew. You're just a jealous little boy playing with matches." Andrew's eyes darted around the room. He realized there was no escape. The elevator was blocked by Gabriel. The guards had abandoned him. A twisted smile formed on Andrew's face. "If I can't have the crown," he whispered, "then nobody can." He raised his gun, not at Gabriel, but at the glass window behind him. Bang! 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 The reinforced glass, already stressed by the high winds, spiderwebbed. Andrew turned to Gabriel, his eyes wide and manic. "Catch me, brother." He threw himself backward, crashing through the weakened glass. "No!" Gabriel lunged forward, ignoring the pain in his chest. He reached out his hand, grasping into the night air. But he was too late. Andrew fell. He didn't scream. He just plummeted into the city lights below, a white figure, swallowed by the darkness he had tried to weaponize. Gabriel stood at the shattered edge, the wind howling around him, tugging at his clothes. He watched until he couldn't see anything anymore. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Natalia. She pulled him back from the edge. "It's over, Gabriel. It's done." Gabriel looked at her. He looked at the Dons, who were now bowing their heads in respect, acknowledging the true king. He didn't care about them. He turned to Natalia, cupped her face in his hands, and rested his forehead against hers. "Let's go home," he said. 6 months later. The Gilded Lily was reopening. The renovations had cost a fortune, but the result was spectacular. The jazz band was playing a slow, sultry tune. At table 1, the best seat in the house, sat Gabriel Kovac. He looked healthier, the grey gone from his skin, the sharp edges of his suit perfectly tailored. "Your wine, sir," a voice said. Gabriel looked up. Natalia was standing there. She wasn't wearing a waitress uniform. She was wearing a dress of deep crimson velvet diamonds glittering at her throat. She held a bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux. "I hear the service here used to be terrible." Gabriel teased, a genuine smile lighting up his face, a smile the world had never seen before her. "The management was difficult," Natalia countered, her eyes dancing with amusement. "But I hear the new owner is much more accommodating." She poured the wine. She did it perfectly. Not a drop spilled. She set the bottle down and sat in the chair opposite him, not as a servant, but as an equal, as a partner. Gabriel picked up his glass. He swirled the red liquid. "To the stain," Gabriel said, raising his glass. "To the stain." Natalia agreed, clinking her glass against his. "I love you, Natalia," he said simply and without hesitation. "I know." She smiled, taking a sip. "Now drink your wine, Gabriel. We have a city to run." Gabriel drank. The wine was perfect. But as he looked at the woman across from him, the spy who had frozen the room, the waitress who had saved his soul, he knew he was drunk on something far more potent than vintage grapes. The Ruthless Mafia boss had lost his heart, but he had gained a queen, and this time he would make sure the glass never shattered. And that is the end of the saga of Gabriel and Natalia. From a spilled glass of wine to ruling the underworld together. What a journey. Did you expect Andrew to take the plunge at the end? And honestly, do you think Gabriel forgave him too easily? Or was it the only way? If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. I have a new story coming next week about a bodyguard who falls in love with the president's daughter. So make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell on so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.